Welcome to Solo Travel Adventures, my sisters. Don't let fear hold you back from traveling alone. I want you to gather your courage, listen to inspiring stories, and learn how to travel solo while safely navigating new places from this show. I'm Cheryl Esch, solo travel advocate and travel coach, and I want you to have a transformative experience when you travel solo. So pack your bags, book your flight, and check one more time for that passport. It's time to explore the world. Hey, sister travelers. Well, I cannot believe that summer is right around the corner. And if you have not made your summer travel plans, you need to do that now. But what is considered summer travel peak period? Well, in the U.S., the travel industry kind of says the months of June, July, August are typically the summer travel months where you will have higher prices both in airfare and accommodations and probably just about anything else. And in the U.S., it's typically starts actually a little bit earlier than that. Usually May, it starts in May with Memorial Day weekend, which is usually the last weekend of May, followed by Monday. And then it carries over into what we call Labor Day here, which is celebrated the first weekend or first Monday with a weekend prior to that in September. So you will find that during that time frame, travel is very busy. There are many people getting their summer vacations in because if they have children, summer is one of the only times they may have the opportunity to travel with the kids and not be missing school. So it is what's considered high season in travel, but it's a great time to, of course, get away. And I'm here to share both a funny story about my family life and summer vacations and give you some tips on how you can survive any kind of summer travel you may have planned. But let me share my story. As a family, we did go on vacations quite often, and we were actually one of our favorite places that we frequented a lot was Sanibel Island, which is on the Gulf of Mexico side of Florida. And we even went, yearly for a while, even twice a year, but we always went off season. Of course, you never want to go really to a Florida beach in the summer, although some people do, and that's quite fine. I've done it. But we would go off season, meaning either Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter were typically the time frames that we would go. Because back then in school, we actually would have, like the full week of Thanksgiving off. We even had extra time around Easter off, which they don't really do much anymore. But anyways, the summer was always a difficult time to get away. But because my father was a self-employed he was an entrepreneur, as we call it now, but he was in the construction business. And so summer is always the busiest time of year for his business. And so it was really hard for him to get away. And he was also notorious, and that was the big joke, of procrastinating and putting that kind of thing off and not planning anything. And then suddenly feeling at the end of the summer, feeling guilty because he hadn't planned anything. So this happened, I just recall a really rushed and I'd say guilt-ridden a trip that was planned spontaneously. It was Labor Day weekend, because by the time that came around, summer was pretty much over, and my father had finally realized that he hadn't planned anything for us kids or a summer vacation for us. So he said, let's do something Labor Day weekend. Now, by that point, my two older sisters were out of the house. It was just my brother and I. And he decided that we would go to Niagara Falls, which where we lived was only about a 4.5-hour drive. So not terrible for a weekend trip. Now, this was planned spare of the moment, of course. So I know that both my parents could sometimes be spontaneous, but my father tends to be the one that does do more wanting to make sure he plans a hotel. And so I don't know what happened there, but he I think he planned the first night, but the second night was not planned. And I think what happened was we had spent the full day at Niagara Falls. And by the second night, it was just too late and too dark for us to drive back. And so we were driving around Niagara Falls on the US side, trying to find a place to stay, and literally up and down these roads, hopping in and out of the car, hotels, motels, everything was booked. No vacancy signs were up everywhere. And we just kept traveling and driving from place to place, hoping and praying that we would find a place. Well, we finally scrambled, and as we were driving around, you could see the same cars as us doing the same thing, trying to find a place to stay. And we finally found a place. It was a pretty rundown motel, but we were just happy to have a place. And so we were pretty tired because it was dark and it was late at that point. And I think most of us, we just crashed, right? But the next morning, and this is what makes this trip so memorable, not just the fact that it was spontaneous, rushed, there was things that went wrong. I woke up, and when I threw back the covers, I saw first of all, the mattress was I sagged. It was so lumpy and it was saggy. But when I threw back the covers in the morning, I had realized I slept with a cockroach, which was dead on my side of the bed, and just screamed. And I ran into the shower, which I wish I had, flip-flops or something, because the shower wasn't any better. Trickling water. I don't even know if the water got hot. And we just quickly packed up and got out of there. But, we look back at that trip now and we kind of laugh because it was not planned. And, there are some things that you can do to maybe prevent a trip like that from happening, and in trying to plan your trips over the summer. Now, I love spontaneous travel, and there are two times that I will consider doing spontaneous travel. Well, one is I don't do it in the summer months for sure, because I know that things are busy, and unless I know I'm going to be car camping, then I make sure that I have accommodations set up during the summer months. Now, off season, I know that it's going to be a little easier to find places to stay. So that's number one. Number two, when I do a spontaneous trip, I typically will also pick a place that it might be a road trip typically, but someplace that's maybe not as popular to travel to, because then again, I know that there's going to be availability for accommodations and still things to do. But I want to really share with you 4 tips, summer travel tips that I can give you, because if you are traveling this summer, you want to prepare yourself. You want to prepare yourself mentally and also with some physical items as well. So first of all, from a mental perspective, number one thing, if you are traveling this summer, whether you are flying, driving, taking public transportation while you're at your destination, I would say allow plenty of time. Please just know things will get delayed. There will be lots of people, and you want to also have patience because, again, there will be lots of people. So patience is going to be super important. And if you have that buffer of time, you're not going to be as anxious about getting to wherever that is that you may be traveling to. There will potentially be delays if you're flying. And so just be ready for that. Mentally be prepared for that. Number 2, because there might potentially be delays or you may not know where you'll end up, I always carry a water bottle with me and some snacks. So you want to be prepared for yourself physically by having some nutrients with you. And so I always carry an empty water bottle. I prefer my life straw, especially if I'm flying, because you can't take liquids through the security check, but it allows me to get water at the other end and it's filtered. And then snacks, of course. I always like to carry snacks because you never know when you're going to get a chance to eat, particularly if you're on the road, when that next restaurant or rest stop will be. And, if you have a delay on a plane, or maybe you're having to sit on the tarmac for some reason, having some snacks available is always a good thing. And it will prevent you from getting what we call hangry. That's hungry and angry at the same time. So making sure, number 2, you carry some water and snacks with you. Number 3, if you're doing some summer travel, and this is maybe the only time, especially if you're a school teacher, we know that summer is one of the only times as a teacher you can get the opportunity to travel. But consider going to less popular places, maybe a smaller city, a smaller town. Maybe try to avoid some of those big tourist attraction places. Maybe avoid the Disneylands of wherever you're going. Maybe avoid if there's a festival or some sort of big sporting event going on, i.e. the Summer Olympics in Paris. Okay, so things to consider. If you like that stuff, that's great. Just know that you want to be prepared for the crowds, but if that's something you want to avoid and have a less stressful and smoother summer experience, then choose those places that might be less frequented. And number 4, although I love being spontaneous, or at least allowing in my travels that time to wander, that time to be flexible with my schedule, I would say, and go back to my story of Niagara Falls, please pre-book your accommodations if you're doing some summer travel. For my example, you know that it's not always the best idea to wing it when you're doing summer travel when it comes to finding a place to stay. My other example also during the summer was a friend and I were driving from Pennsylvania to Colorado, and we ran into the same thing. It was in July, so it's summer months, and we kept driving, and every exit we got off of, there was no accommodations, none. And they would tell, even the hotels would say, oh, well, you can go to the next town. And we kept driving. And by that point, it was like maybe 11 o'clock at night. We're both exhausted. We ended up pulling into an empty parking lot next to a McDonald's and sleeping in our car. Luckily, we had a minivan, so we could stretch out. But we weren't exactly prepared for that. So that could be another thing. You could just make sure if you're doing a road trip, you might be prepared for something like that, unless you have done number 4 and you have pre-booked any kind of accommodations you have planned for your summer travels. Well, I want you to enjoy your summer travels. I want it to be stress-free, memorable, and just smoothly. So consider those 4 things. And I think number 1 is really the most important, in that you mentally, your mindset is that it's summer. You can anticipate that potential possibility of, just lots more crowds than, say, if you went in like November or October or somewhere. So consider that, and, drop me a little note and let me know where you are traveling this summer. I think there's a way now in Buzzsprout, my podcast platform, where you could actually send me a little fan mail. And so if you want to send me a fan mail and let me know where you're traveling this summer, I would love to hear that. And remember, just get out there and have an adventure. Hey, sister travelers, did this podcast inspire and encourage you, or move you to get out there and travel? Wonderful. There are 3 ways you can thank me. First one is leave a written review for the show on Apple Podcast. 2, share the show with your sister travelers, your friends, your family. And 3, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And thank you again for listening to the show. Sisters, be fearless, take the leap and get out there and have an adventure.